Hello everyone, I'm Paloma and welcome to Voice of Influence, your space to explore the voices that transform the world. Today we had a very special episode where we talk about language, identity, and power. Our central theme is navigating linguistic territories like gender, identity, and social influence. A conversation about how language shapes who we are, how others perceive us, and how we influence society. Join us on this journey through the complex intersections between words, gender, and identity. My partner Jacqueline will start talking about this, so go ahead, Jackie.
Factors such as gender have some problem associated with the use of label to classify people and how there is linguistic variation. Linguistic difference correlate with gender difference and more with other social factors. The use of gender has a social category and establishes sociolinguistic studies saying that people of the same gender in different linguistic practices, as there is a difference between the speech of men and women. This could be seen more by the different groups to which they use their linguistic resource. An example would be that since our childhood we ask her speak in a feminine way, in voice in a masculine way, and this is due to social and cultural reason because they consider that is appropriate for our gender and it is the correct way to express ourselves, since girl has to be more delicate and boy has to be strong and brave, and they are presenter as the role model or as the roles.
So something important that is mentioned there is how gender influences the way we speak and how we communicate. Research such as Mallory, Rake, and McConnell question the idea that gender alone determines how we speak. Inside they say that linguistic differences have more to do with the social group we belong to and the activities we engage in. So I agree with you, say, good point of view. Now is my turn of my partner, Maite will tell us that she thinks about the thing.
Hi everyone, this is Maite Muro and I'd like to talk about how I've personally seen language influence power and identity, especially when it comes to a gender. In many social situations, the way we speak can change how people see us, whether they respect us, ignore us, or even try to silence us. For example, in high school and even now in university, I've noticed how men are often expected to sound assertive, while women are sometimes labeled as too emotional or too aggressive for doing the exact same thing that really stuck with me. One time, I was in a group project where a girl confidently led the discussion. She was clear, organized, and really good at what she was doing. But later, someone called her bossy behind her back. And no one would have said that if it were a guy speaking the same way. That's when I realized language is power, but the same language doesn't have the same power for everyone. That's why inclusive language matters so much. When we use some words, correct pronouns, or avoid stereotypes in our words, we're not just being polite, we're validating their identity, we're also challenging the idea that only certain voices deserve to be heard or respected. From what we've studied, especially in critical discourse analysis, I see how language is not neutral, it carries all these invisible social rules. and sometimes it reinforces who gets to have prestige and who doesn't. So we think about identity and power, we should also think about the small words we use every day because those small words can either open doors or quietly keep them shut. And thanks for listening.
What Matei says is so interesting and is also true. Language is not only communicates, it's also positions. Sometimes we don't even realize it, but the way we speak and how others react to is loaded with social expectation, especially when it comes to gender. I also think what you mentioned about inclusive language is very important. Using the current pronouns and avoid stereotypes isn't just a matter of being kind, but of organizing the identity of others and creating facile spaces. Because as you say, my those little words can open doors or close them without any notice. Now it's my partner Leslie turn to give her opinion.
Hello, how are you? I hope you are well. I am Leslie, and let's talk about language in relation to gender. We know that language is an important part of how we perceive gender roles. Okay? But first of all, what is a gender role? It is the set of behaviors and expectations that should be in the way that women and men are, feel, and act. So, despite the persistence of this role assigned to men and women based on gender stereotypes, in many cultures and societies today, they still prevail, like in family, social, and relationships. So we are accustomed to stereotypes and representation of men and women. And this is how gender inequality is reinforced. So language can reflect norms, but it can also challenge them. So the language is a tool that allows to construct an identity that enable us to express our thoughts, feelings, and experience. So it also help us determine how we present ourselves to others. Okay, an example of identity in relation to gender is something we have seen recently, which is the use of pronouns such as ellas in Spanish, of ellas, they, to identity oneself. So this is the example, and we can see many situations like this in our daily lives. So thank you very much for listening.
What a great point. I love you explaining it so clearly and directly. It's true we often take gender roles for granted without questioning them because they are so present in our daily lives, at home, at school, and at work that they become normal. But that's precisely where language has power. It can continue to reinforce those stereotypes, or it can begin to break them down. Now, finally, we have my partner Monica who will give us her point of view.
Hi everyone, I'm Monica and I'm really excited to close today's episode with some reflection on how gender, identity, and language intersect. Not only in what we say, but in how society reads what we say. Well, one of the most influential ideas in this field comes from Judith Butler, who argues that gender is not something we are, it's something we do, through repeat behaviors, speech, and interactions. So, this means that the way we speak, from our tone or our word choices, isn't just a reflection of our identity, it's a performance of it. So, when we speak in certain way, we're not just communicating, we're also reinforcing and resisting our gender norms. Building on this, sociolinguist Deborah Cameron points out that the expectations we place on how men and women should speak are deeply rooted in cultural stereotypes. For example, women are often expected to be more polite, indirect, or nice, while men are expected to be assertive and direct. But when someone steps outside of those expectations, like a woman being direct or a man being emotional, well, their speech is judged, even if the message is the same. So, navigating language is not neutral, it's political. And understanding this will help us to see why promoting inclusive language isn't just about avoiding offense. It's about challenging the structure that decide whose voices are valued and whose are dismissed. So, as we've heard today, our words hold power. And by becoming aware of how language shapes identity, we also gain the power to create more equal and respectful spaces for everyone. Thanks for listening, and I hope today's episode has given you something to think about.
Thank you, Monica, for closing with such a powerful reflection. I really like the idea that language is a way of acting, not just communicating. Because when we speak, we are also constructing who we are and at the same time challenging and complicit with what is expecting of us according to our gender. So, if there one thing we want to take away from this episode is our words have power. And if we learn to use them constantly, we can help us build a fair world for all identities. So thank you for joining us on Voice of Influence. We'll see you in the next episode.